In this episode, I want to share some thoughts I have about risk versus reward for different pieces of safety equipment we might be carrying with us or just using on our rafts. And first of all, by leaving the house and going rafting, you're choosing to do something inherently dangerous. There is danger in the world. If you stay on your sofa, you're mostly safe. But by going rafting, you're surrounded by different dangers. Our goals are to minimize these dangers and be able to deal with them, have some tools to deal with them. And there's pros and cons to a lot of these tools that I want to talk about. And one of our goals here is to minimize the number of like loops and straps being get tangled in. We're not going to eliminate all of them. We want to minimize them. There's this. I could get tangled in this strap right here as part of my safety equipment. And so a lot of boats have weird straps and things all over them. We should try to minimize those, recognizing that's almost impossible to remove all of them. So with that, I want to talk about 8 different things, pieces of safety equipment you want to just maybe think about. And this is, I'm going to give my opinions, but you have to make your own choice based on your own type of boating, the people you go with, your equipment, whether the river's continuous or not continuous, a whole bunch of reasons you might want to make decisions on the equipment that you have or bring or wear. So the first one are carabiners on the outside of your PFD. You may or may not know, but I think this is ridiculous. These are just silly to have, in my opinion, because this is just something that's rigidly attached to your PFD that can get caught on something. It can get caught on a branch, it can get caught on, I don't know, something, and it doesn't provide much value, right? When I think of rescuing, I think of rescuing a person, right? I'm not going to, what am I going to do? Throw a carabiner to somebody? Am I going to grab them like this? There's no real value to me to just having a carabiner on my PFD or 2 of them, right? Now for equipment retrieval, like our boat stuck, it's kind of nice to have some of these quicker to get to, but you can put them in a pocket, you can put them in a bag. I just don't see the value of having these clipped on the outside of your PFD. Unless I'm a first responder, like a Swiftwater professional showing up to a scene, I'm probably not going to get in the water. So having a bunch of stuff on my body like this is maybe nice to have for quick access. But for boaters, I just don't see the value in carabiners. So again, an opinion, you have to make your own choice. The next are tow tethers. There's a tow tether on this PFD right here. It's a quick access tow tether. This is something I choose to use when I'm working in a kayak and I have responsibility for people because I can pull this, attach it to an unconscious swimmer and pull them to shore. It's a great tool. A lot of people use these to tow kayaks to shore. I don't enjoy being attached to a kayak, so I rarely will do that. And some people who are rescue professionals will use this to attach to go on live bait. We'll attach to a rope. Or I'll just have whoever's doing it attached to my D-ring. If I'm going to do that, which is rare, attached to my ring, I don't think I need this extra few feet. So this is something that I don't see the value. It's a potential snag hazard, right? This should come free if it attaches to something, but if it's still attached, I have to have the presence of mind to pull this and the ability to do this and the training on using this to release the other end. So I just don't see the value. There have been several fatalities using these where people attach to something rigid. We should not be doing this. This is cost fatality. You want to attach, if you're going to attach this to some sort of point that will come free. Okay, next up are knives. And we should be carrying knives. It's a good idea. A lot of us have external knives, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. The value is you can quickly access it and cut some rope if you're caught on some sort of rope situation. The downside is they usually stick up. They're kind of in the way. So when you're getting into a raft, this could get stuck on a perimeter line, making it harder to get back in the raft. I prefer like sort of a clean look on the front. So when I'm pulling myself up into a raft, I go up pretty easily. There's not stuff like carabiners, for example, they can get jangled on the side of the rope, so side of the boat. So I'm going to choose not to do an external knife. I personally am choosing to do an internal knife that I can get to almost as quickly and deploy almost as fast to cut some sort of rope. And that's just a personal choice depending on your situation. And you should just think about it. If getting back into a boat quickly is important to you, maybe more important than the less likely chance of getting attached to a rope somehow accidentally, then you may want to consider an internal knife. Next are perimeter lines. I just mentioned that. That's a line around your raft. And I think in a lot of cases they're great because if you fall out, you want to grab that perimeter line. If somebody in your boat falls out, they can grab it. I think it's a great tool for having people grab on. So they're attached to this big floaty raft of yours. The big downside of the perimeter lines is when they get loose. And a lot of them, if you look out there in the real world, you'll see a ton of loose perimeter lines, which are easy for people to get snagged into. So if they're tight, I think they're generally fine. But there's still a chance with the perimeter line that you could get somehow like a leg in there tangled in it, which could be unsafe. That's something to think about. Also for me, on really rocky rivers, I don't want to be holding on my boat because I might get smashed between the boat and a rock. Or if I have a passenger, I may not want them grabbing the perimeter line. I just want them to swim to shore and get on a rock because they could get smashed between the boat and a rock. I see that as a potential hazard. So depending on the river I'm doing, if it's high water, continuous rivers, I personally like perimeter lines. Shallower water, rocky rivers, I'm not personally as big of a fan. Next are cataract flip lines. These are these bungee lines you'll see under a lot of cataracts. And it's like they bungee and they're attached pretty solidly to the side of the boat, but they still present a hazard because you could, like a perimeter line, fall, like put a leg in and get tangled in this thing as well. So it's bungeed, it's up next to the boat. The advantage is it allows for a very quick reflip. When your cataract flips over, you just grab that line, you pull back, it flips the cataract back over pretty quickly. So you're saving maybe 10, 15 seconds, which may not be a big deal on like the South Fork of the American or the Clackamas, something that's like class 2, 3 with like pools in between. But if you're on the wind, high water wind, North Fork Payette, Cherry Creek, you need that quick reflip. That's where something like this is really valuable. And the potential hazard of maybe snagging on it is small compared to the hazard of a slow reflip. Next, on the same sort of category are raft ladders. I think more and more people are putting ladders on the side of the rafts to help them get inside to a boat. I personally can pull myself back into a boat and I can pull others in quickly. And so the hazard that raft ladders pose, which is a pretty serious entanglement hazard, isn't worth it for me. If I can't get back in the boat, I'm not physically fit enough or unable to for some reason, a raft ladder is kind of nice. But you have to recognize you're taking a risk. Do you want the ability to get back in your boat quickly? Is that more important to you than the potential of getting snagged up in the ladder and potentially drowning, right? It is a hazard. So again, if you're doing like flat, like pull drop, like you run a rapid and the pool at the bottom, climb up the raft ladder, that seems responsible. But if you're in moving current, these ladders are dangerous. And so if you're using them correctly, great. But I wouldn't personally use these on a river like the Wind, again, North Fork American, North Fork Payette, like anything with constant current. You want to be able to get back in your boat. And that could mean you having a plan. If you can't get back in your boat, your friends are right next to you, pulling them in their boat and throwing them back in your boat or something else. But recognize these raft ladders are potentially really hazardous when there's moving current, and using them intelligently, I think, is really smart. Next up are flip lines. I think a lot of us carry flip lines now. This is a great way to flip your raft back over. I carry mine in my PFD, and you just sort of clip it on and flip it back over. Historically, they went around people's waists, and people still do carry them around their waist, kind of carabiner them on. And if they're pretty tight to your body, they're not much of a snag hazard, but they are a snag hazard. And so for me, like there's a slight chance I get caught up on this if I swim under a tree or maybe accidentally clip into a non-locking carabiner that somebody has ridiculously in their boat, which I see a lot of non-locking carabiners on boats in the real world. So I'm very nervous about them. But instead of having these around our waist, we're now carrying these smaller, more high-tech flip lines in our PFD pocket. I think it's a trade-off. I feel like it's pretty safe in here, pretty responsible in here. But if you have yours around your waist, at least you understand the risk. There's a risk I could get tangled on something with it, but for you, it's worth the reward of the quick access to this tool that's really valuable. And last are whistles. I think it's good for us to have whistles. A lot of people have their whistles on little tethers up here, and the nice thing is you can blow it while you're looking around, right? For me, this little loop is just a little hazard. It's something this might seem small, but I made this loop as small as I can. But it's something that could get caught again on a branch. And I do a fair number of rivers with wood, so that's getting caught on branches is a concern of mine. Whereas I like attaching mine to some sort of zipper in my PFD. The downside of this is it's really hard to look up. I can't survey the scene and blow the whistle. So some people think you need to be able to look while you blow the whistle. I think I can look, blow the whistle, and look again pretty quickly. So I'm choosing this trade-off for me because I don't like this little loop of stuff right here. I'd rather not have like extra rope and this thing flapping in my face. And that's just a choice that I made. So those are a handful of trade-offs. I know there's more. If there's some other thing you're wondering about, like, is this smart or is that smart? There's no clear-cut answer. These are 8 different things that come up, and you may choose different things than somebody else based on who you're boat with, the type of boating you do. Is it guided, non-guided? The water, is it continuous river? Is it pool drop? Are you kayaking? Are you rafting? There's a lot of reasons. So there's not a one size fits all answer for everybody. One thing I find when I'm out talking to people in the real world, which the real world is when I'm not here, when I'm out boating and talking to people, is I hear the terms always and never. Always have an external knife. Never have a flip line around your waist. Always have this. Never have that. And I'm going to I tried really hard to avoid the terms always and never. And so these are all things like even carabiners here. I think personally that this is a ridiculous thing that people do, putting carabiners there. I'm not going to say never do that, again, because some swiftwater professionals will show up to a scene, and it's great that they have these so they can quickly have access to them. There's some cases where I guess this does make sense, right? But it's a trade-off. And so I'm going to try to avoid like being clear cut on this. So if you have some friend that says, always have an external knife, always have a flip on under waist, always have this, always have that, you should make some judgments on your own, and you have to look again at your own situation, your own abilities, and just your own tolerance for risk and which things you think are riskier for you. So again, put stuff, if you have more things to talk about in the comments, if you have more thoughts about these 8 things I talked about, you're like, oh, Zach, actually, you need to be able to look up with a whistle. That's insane that you put your head down. Tell me. It's great. That's how I learn. I'm not, I don't know everything. I know some stuff, but I certainly learn from your comments. So please have a discussion in the comments, and like, subscribe, and that's it for this episode. See you next time.